A lot of exciting Gemaras today.
Yeah, and our website is
What's a scam? A lot of interesting Gemaras today. Yeah, for this Shulchan. Actually, the last thing we learned was Shulchan Melech did not take up enough for his own covet. We're up to Daf Chaf Beis of Beis, bottom line.
That's the latest one. Next to the other, the latest.
We're up to Chaf Beis of Beis, bottom line. The last thing we said was Shulchan Melech did not take up enough for his covet. The person should. Every time Talmid Chacham, top of Gimel Amud Aleph, that does not revenge and hold a grudge like a snake. Talmid Chacham is not Talmid Chacham. And of course, that sounds like a very, very strange statement. You'd expect the Talmid Chacham to be the most forgiving of everybody. And we'll see the Gemara limits this, but there's a couple of points. The Rambam says, that it means like this, that if a person gets embarrassed in private, of course he should forgive. Of course he should forgive. Maybe you should sit here, Dick. What's wrong with sitting here?
I'm not crying. There's more crying than anyone else.
That the Rambam writes, if a Talmid Chacham gets embarrassed in private, of course he forgives straight away. We're discussing a public disgrace. A public disgrace of a Talmid Chacham, then the Talmid Chacham has to realize that the status that he has as a Talmid Chacham means that he has Torah within him. And if he lets go of that respect, he shows that a lack of importance for being a Talmid Chacham. So therefore, just like Shulchan Melech was criticized, you're a king. So as a king, you got to stick up for the rights of a king. So too, a Talmid Chacham has to realize he's a Talmid Chacham, and he should make sure that he gets treated like a Talmid Chacham. Now, Shah has a very beautiful point, is that Pasuk says by the snake that Hashem told him that Adam will stamp you on your head, and you will bite where? At the heel, that's an ankle, the heel. Says in Mashal the same thing, that a person who gets something harmful done, even in a case where he's supposed to stand up for his own cover, and even in a case where he's supposed to revenge, but it should be a minuscule of what he gets. Just like the snake gets stamped on his head, which is the most important part of the body, but when he revenges, only revenges by a small bite on the heel. That's how he says that idea. But I know, that's why I was born in Mashal. But the point is, it's a Mashal. That means Talmid Chacham must not ignore completely. Talmid Chacham has to show that because he's a Talmid Chacham, he has to demand the respect that Talmid Chacham gets. Otherwise, it's a lack of respect for being a Talmid Chacham. Ha'ksiv, lo yisikim, lo yisitay, the person shouldn't revenge. It's referring to money. Now, it comes out that this Gemara is saying that when it comes to money, you're not allowed to revenge. As the Gemara explains in a moment, if let's say I say to you, can I borrow your car? And you say to me, no. Next thing you say to me, can I borrow your phone? I'm not allowed to say to you no as revenge. But when it's not money, meaning when it's emotional abuse or physical, meaning let's say you slap me and I want to slap you back, or you shtech me and I want to shtech you back. For this Gemara, it is clear, black and white, there is no problem of revenge. Right? So if you hit me and I hit you back, there is no problem of revenge. That is how the Yomi, the Ritva, and many others say. The big spanner in the works is that the Rambam doesn't pass it like this. And they actually wrote a letter to the Rabbi, the son of the Rambam, and they said to him, how can your father do such a thing? Passed is against the Gemara. And he said, because my father's Gemara, these words didn't exist. And my father's Gemara, the words were, Ahu b'minid alma, meaning, when it comes to matters of the world, here, come here. When it comes to matters of the world, meaning that if you slap me, I'm not allowed to slap you back. But if you treat Torah with disrespect, then that means not like the words that we have in our Gemara. Because of this, it's a machlokes rishonim, and it's a safek d'oraisa. Chavetz Chaim in Avos Chesed writes, like any safek d'oraisa, you have to be machmir. That means even though the majority of rishonim hold that the Issa of the Nekama is only when it comes to financial matters. I say to you, you lend me money. You say, no, I can't revenge. You steal from me £1, I'm not allowed to steal from you £2, etc. But because we have a number of Rishonim, the Rambam and others, that don't have this skill set, because of that, we have to be choshesh. Okay, let's get this clear. Okay, let's look more inside. The Tanya. What's nekama? What is revenge? What is holding a grudge? Nekima. Lend me your sickle. Lend me your hammer. Lend you like you didn't lend me. Zui nekama. Not. Lend me your coat. I lend you my coat. I'm not like you, that you never lent me. Zui netir, that is netir. So we have a story of Nekama and Netir, Nekama by the hammer and the sickle, Netira with the hammer and the cloak. The Gu Alia, what do you want to see?
On your charity page. It doesn't for you. You love to say I'm not giving it back. Is that like a monetary thing?
Revenge.
Let's make it clear. Again,
No.
I come to you and say to you, please put £10 or £100,000, that's still good money, on my charity page. And then you say to me, no.
Too many people.
And then a few years later, I ask you,
I'd rather give.
That's what most people
you
give
never
because
gave
someone
me,
else.
so why
You never gave me, so why should I give you?
Is that not?
It's not you losing out. It's the charity losing out.
No. What's the difference to a lending? Oh, it's not lending. It's giving.
I don't know.
I love
I
that.
don't know. Now I'll tell you very interesting, another machlokas to show you, a very big machlokas. I must admit, this I saw from a sefer. This I saw from a sefer called Mishpatei HaShonim, which was written by Yitzchak Silver, who was actually, I've got 2 volumes. He's got the short and the long. I've got both because it's a very nice sefer. And his father worked in the British Museum in London. And I get me a bit of a chizuk that he himself grew up in and he's written very nice form. It just shows that everybody has the. Anyway, but he writes there very interesting machlokas shonim. Let's say you say to me, "Can I borrow a cup?" And I say no. Next, I said, "Can I borrow a jug?" So you're not allowed to say no. That's nekama. You're not allowed to say yes, but I'm not like you because I'm not copying you. Are you allowed to say yes, but deep down in your heart, you're upset about it? What would you say?
No.
Oh, Ben
The
says
grudge
no,
is
it's
meaning
holding a grudge. So why is the more need to say, and he shows very interesting that this is a question which the Rishonim discuss at great length, and again it's a machlokas Rishonim. Can you hold a grudge if there's no effect? It's a very important machlokas Rishonim. Another thing, a very interesting Goalia, I'm just using to bore myself the Goalia, it's an interesting sefer. Wow. And he writes a very interesting thing, a bit of a chap. He says, if you want to say a story, the first person borrowed the hammer, and then wanted the other fellow wanted a sickle. The other one wanted to borrow a hammer. The next one wanted to borrow a coat. Why don't we just stick to the same thing? So you can't stick exactly to the same thing because it's not likely if I want to borrow a sickle from you the next day, you should want to borrow a sickle. It doesn't usually work. Okay, so change from hammer to a sickle. But why then from a sickle to hammer then to a coat? So he explains it's actually one very long story. I asked for you, you said no. You asked for me, I said no. So I didn't accommodate to you. And the next day, then I come back to you, the same people, and now I'm asking for a coat. And he says, from here, you see, you're not allowed to do Netira, even if the other person didn't come. So that he says, you're not allowed to do Netira. If somebody doesn't come to you, it doesn't give you a right to do Netira or come to them. Okay. So he said 2 machlekes, by the way. One is regarding if you slap me, I'm allowed to slap you back. Or if you stech me, that's machlekes. Rambam, all the other Rishonim, the maker, the Rambam's machlekes. And the other machlekes is regarding if I hold it in my heart without saying another word. Says the Gemara, the Gemara says the answer was that it's not if there's a person allowed to revenge, and somebody who hears the disgrace doesn't reply, when they rejoice when they suffer, they'll be as bright as the sun. Does anybody know why some Jews moichel and it doesn't revenge himself is considered to be, it doesn't hit back, is compared to the sun? Why is it compared to the sun?
Wasn't there a story between the Shemesh and the Nirvana?
Very good. What happened? The moon complained that you can't have 2 people wearing the same crown. The sun kept quiet. So you see that the sun kept quiet, the moon complains. That for a person who doesn't revenge himself, There's literally, if you read Aleinu L'Shabeach, the story after story of people that were moichel a grudge, and then afterwards their tefillah or bakosha was accepted. Literally, Chaim Kanievsky wrote a letter to somebody that the best person to get a tefillah from is somebody that was moichel a grudge. It's very interesting. It's a very powerful thing. In the Talmud Devarim, in the Shah Beis, in the Perek Beis, he writes very, very strongly. He says that if a person was to be off, every type of person doesn't have there deserves to suffer. He says, imagine you'd be put on the table. This is Moshe Kildavur, who was a Talmud of the Arizal, told the biggest Mekubalim there ever was, the Ramak. When he died, the Arizal said that he saw about him a pillar of fire next to his bed. Chaim said this. But anyway, what happened was, he writes like this, that person doesn't have suffer. So you say to him, okay, you can have a lifetime of illness, or lose all your money, or that your house should be burned down, or that somebody should hurt your feelings and you don't revenge back. He says, if it would be put down in front of you, nobody would be foolish enough to say, I'd rather have a lifetime of suffering. And the fact is, he says even more, because it was a big tzaddik, he says even more than that, all the other ones, if a person's not well his whole life, loses all his money, he won't be able to do so many mitzvahs, because at the end of the day, it distracts you from mitzvahs if you do it all the time. But this is a very simple thing. All you're doing is having a bit of emotional pain, and afterwards you're moichel, it doesn't take away from your learning. He says a person should be grateful every time he has such an opportunity. Anyway, it's very grace. So the Gemara says, we're talking about where he doesn't revenge, but all he does is inside his heart, he's upset. And Rashi explains that if somebody else revenges on his behalf, he's happy. Somebody who's moichel, Hashem's moichel and all his averes, which is mashman, not have it in the heart. And it's what mefias, that a person's mefias, and when the person's mefias, then he's moichel. So again, we've limited like this. A Talmud Chacham should revenge with exception. Not when it comes to financial matters. Not that he should actually do something, but rather that somebody else should do it on his behalf and he shouldn't stop them. And if the person asks mechila, he should be moichel. But if the person hasn't asked mechila, and it's an emotional matter, and then he should indeed keep it in order to show that he cares about Kovod HaTorah. There's one more thing that the Chinuch writes, the Sefer HaChinuch writes, very, very beautiful Lashon, that the whole Issa of Nekama is only at a later stage. But at the time, you can do any Kama you want. Because Hashem doesn't expect a human being to be like a stone that has no emotions. It's a shame you're not hearing me at the back there, I can see. A person, the Torah doesn't expect a person to be like a stone. So if somebody shtechs you at the time, you can shtech it back. Somebody does something to you nasty at the time, you can do something back. Chinuch writes, of course, it's a higher madrega, not. Now, I saw a very nice letter. No, it's either Shom Vosm, listen, Karelis. I don't remember, I saw it today. Anyway, very interesting. He says like this, I don't know the reason why I mentioned all these things. We've just pointed out that revenge is not always forbidden. We gave actually at least 2 or 3. At the time it's permitted. If it's emotional, perhaps it's permitted. We've got different cases where it's permitted. So he writes that there's some parents that the minute the child fights with another child, they say, revenge, revenge, and they get very upset with the children for keeping revenge. And he says that many times it's not a healthy chinuch issue to get yourself so involved. Sometimes if a child's been hurt, to expect a child not to revenge himself is, first of all, it could be emotional on the Kunt Moshe, except for the Rambam, you're allowed to do revenge. Secondly, it could be at the time, and then you'll come to the chinuch, you're allowed to revenge. And what will happen is, we'll just create the child to feel. He's talking about the fact that if you've got children beating each other up, or hurting each other, or fighting with each other, don't go with the religious aspect of revenge. Try and sort it out, obviously. It says if you see a child that months after the incident have happened, and he's plotting how to create revenge, then there's something wrong and you have to talk about revenge. But this thing, and I got quite a lot of inspiration from the letter, because it's a very valid point. It's a very, very true. That's right. Oh, he can bully it. Yeah, he writes. Actually, I should say, many times, if a child doesn't learn to stick up for themselves, then they can actually suffer from it. That's right. He says that. In fact, that sometimes they're doing. Oh, there's another Lashon Rishonim that Megan, when he does something to protect himself, is also permitted. And he says many times when a child, if you make the child and you put the constant revenge too high, then they will not learn to protect themselves. It causes too much guilt, he writes. He writes that point as well. Anyway, so Maisa, we've learned a bit about revenge now. And the Maisa, person, obviously, the biggest madrega is not to revenge. and we mentioned the term of how much schar a person gets in Shemaim for being moichel. That is not a Talmud Chacham. The Talmud Chacham has to stick up for his covered. There are stories of Gedolim. It's not all the Gedolim you have it. That would sometimes insist on their covered, right? They say Cheskel Abramsky was once called to the court, and the lawyer introduced him as the chief rabbi, the greatest rabbi in the whole of England. Cheskel Abramsky was Rabbi in London, and he interrupted and he said, not just the greatest rabbi in the whole of England, the greatest rabbi in the whole of Europe and Canada. So the judge said to him, "What's by humility?" He said, "I'm under oath, Your Honor." So I promised to say the truth. But it's a true story, by the way. I saw it. But Beis, sometimes person has to know, you got to cover that too. Oh, now go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about the lottery. Let's go very briefly. What happens is they do a raffle. How do they do a raffle? They take the hat of one of the people, and he says a number, the one in charge. How high does the number need to be? We put the pictures up yesterday, Yossi. Thank you very much again.
More than the people that
Very good. Why more than the people that are there?
Each one had a figure out. Only one.
No, more than that. If you do a low number, it's easy to cheat. If I was saying now 8, and I start from betting, it's not hard for me to work out where 8 gets to. If I say 55, it's very, very difficult. So again, so you take a number higher than the amount of people in the circle, and everybody puts out 2 fingers. You don't put out, you put out 1 finger. You don't put out 2 fingers. Why not? Because you can cheat, and that way get another chance by putting out 2 fingers. Mishnah says 1 or 2. Oh, the more expensive. 2 or 1. What are you talking about? A healthy person is able to put out a finger for a long time. An ill person can't put 1 finger. It's very painful. So he puts out 2 fingers to help him. Says the Yoma, Tanya, indeed, we've learned in the Beis, Achas Metzin, Stein, and Metzin, don't stick out 2, but Metz, one boy. Even by 2, you're allowed to. By Yechidin, some dude's on his own, meaning he's not amongst everybody else because he's, let's say, got some illness and therefore he's set aside from everybody else. Moitzin Stein. So you can put him 2 because it doesn't matter, because what is the Chashash 2? Is if we're all standing very next to each other and I put out 2 fingers, so you might count 1, 2. If let's say I'm standing to far away because I can't be in the crowd, I'm in a wheelchair, whatever it may be, so you're not going to count me 2, so I can stick out as many fingers as I want. But we only count him as 1, however many fingers to sing out. You don't stick out the Gudda, which is the thumb, and not the long finger. Because of the people that would trick them, because of the deceitful people. If you take out the third, good, but the thumb ain't moininu. Let me take this. If a person stuck out just this finger, we count it. Or even these 2. But the thumb we know don't count. The more explain in a second. But he would get lashed with a rope. He would get hit by sticking out your thumb. A person would get lashed. One says, and it should be explained like this. You're supposed to stick out 1 finger, this finger. If you're not well, you can stick out 2. A person who's cheating and sticks out this finger, okay, you're supposed to stick out this finger. If you're not well, you can stick out 2 because it's not so easy. If you stick out this finger, you shouldn't because it's easier to cheat. But the fact is we count it because it's not such a dangerous one. If you stick out this one, even if you only stick out 1, not only we don't count it at all, that means this one we count as 1, not 2. Because even if you count this, it's only 1, not 2. If you stick out only the thumb, we hit him and we don't count him at all. And he gets hit with Bekia. Bekia literally means threads.
Why is he going to cheat? Because if it's a high number, he won't really work out what's going to happen.
It's a very good question. So Yontav answers that he sees, because must remember he's counting 1, 2, 3, and he's busy looking round, and he sees it's going to finish by the one after him, so he quickly sticks out the second. He doesn't do it right at the beginning because that would be impossible. He won't gain anything. But when he's counted and he works it out, then he says, okay. My Pekia, what's Pekia? My Midra, proper Mitrika, the tie, the Posik. The lash of the Arabs that split. It's called in English the cat o' 9 tails or something. Cat o' 9 tails, something. It's a lash where the end of it, it's split into many ropes, and 9 ropes it was, I think, in British ships. And the idea was particularly painful. So the Kern would get hit with such a stick. With such a horse, whatever it's called. Omar by Maration, beginning of Amina used to say all the time that Biboy Munala Pikia, that the Biboy is Munala Pikia on the threads. And Mina Pesilza, I thought meant the threads, because it's Nan Mibloy Michtisakanim, from the old trousers of the Kanim name from the belts. Meno you mafki, they would pull out threads, when you madliki, they would light candles. Even the Shaman, a lot of the time, get hit with the thread, and when my Pekia Nagda. Again, we have a Mishnah in Shkolin that says Ben Biboi was in charge. What was his job on Pekia? Now, what's the job of Pekia? I used to think the job of Pekia was to pull out the threads, to make wicks, to light candles. But now that I've learned this Gemara, I have decided that the threads is what? To make the wick. So there was a special person whose entire job was to lash the people that stuck out the thumbs. Now, so I was very happy that somebody showed me, I didn't see it myself, that Tesis Shonim on Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph says, but if you look in the Yerushalmi, it's not like that. If you look at Tesis Shonim, it's right about how I read it out to you then. It's very, very few words. And that, even though the Gemara says this from Abaya, but the Gemara in Shkolim says not like that. And indeed, what was Ben Biboy's real job? It was the wicks, and not this threads, which the Gemara mentions over here. Okay. There was a story that two of them ran up the ramp. What happened?
Pushed him
Pushed him off and broke his leg. Oh, Tonu Rabban on Mice, which they can they're both equal. The words and the Kevish running up the ramp. Not al sakin he stabbed him. Not like our mission. And our mission just pushed him off, broke his leg. Here, he actually stabbed him and killed him. Omar with Sadiq, Amalus Ulam. Sadiq stood on the steps of the Ulam. Don't say an interesting thing that there's a sefer called Yosifim, right? Yosifim was written by somebody called Yosef Ben Gurion. And the question is it a reliable sefer? Very big question. Now, Rashi, every so often quotes him, very, very rarely. Rashi over here quotes him all places. Malus Ulam, we just look at it, about 10 lines at the bottom. Let's get a chizuk for it, because Malus Ulam Bahar Beis, Ulam is Harbi, Bonosham Hudas, Kemoshe Kosov. What's the next words of the Rashi? Kemoshe Kosov is Sefer Yosef Ben Gurion. So he's quoting Yosef Ben Gurion, imagine him. It's a little bit, Yosef Ben Gurion was a Rosh, by the way. I'm saying, so it's a little bit like writing a Sefer and quoting, I don't know, Times paper or something, I don't know, New York Times. What? Why? Oh, Ben Gurion. No, he bold the name, Ben Gurion bold the name from Yosef Ben Gurion, from him. The the truth of the matter is that a big Rob who learned a lot, Yusufa said to me that certain parts are very, very accurate, and certain parts are not so accurate. Because what happened was, just very briefly, Ben Gurion and himself, Yusufus, joined the Romans eventually. So the stories once of the later battles are always going to be biased on the Roman side, because at the end of the day,
not written by him, he comments on
the Churban. He writes a lot about the Churban. Yes, he's got very, very lot about the Churban. I don't remember any of the Kinnis quoting him.
He doesn't quote them, but he
he's there.
He writes about the Churban.
He writes about the Churban now. Yeah, it's something to learn on Tishbam. It's got parts which it's got. Anyway, Rai says the Rashi quotes him. But Rai says what happened was when Tzaddik stood on the steps of the Olam. If you find one dead body, what do you have to do? Well, you have to make a whole plot. You have to make a whole thing. Who should make the whole of Yerushalayim? Go, they all started crying. What? Oh, the more is going to discuss it. There's no Eglavufa is when you don't know who killed him. Here we saw who killed him. Go, they all started crying. But the father of the child came and for the boy hadn't yet died. So the boy hadn't yet died. Was the knife Tommy? No. Omar, my son should be your kapop. But he's not yet Tommy. So therefore, quickly take him outside the Beis Hamikdash, not to make and pull out the knife, not to make him Tommy. You see. No. If you pull out the knife before he dies, he won't become Tommy, because he never. You see a father seeing his child dying, and what's he thinking about? That the knife should become Tommy. We'll quote to this Gemara, if you remember Tis and Shkolim, that they were more makbid about Tumah than about anything. Is that true?
Yeah.
He's saying that it's big, that you not to pull out a knife from a stab wound can be dangerous. I never knew that. Okay. They were more concerned about Taras Kelim than Shvichas Tomim. He covered Yerushalayim with blood, Menashe. The more later is going to tell us that this pasuk is to emphasize how they did not care about death. The proof they didn't care about death was You see this man seeing his child dying, he's not that upset. And he's more upset about the tumor. And second of all, Menashe killed so many people that people got used to it. The Marshal says an unbelievable statement. Menashe, when did he live? Menashe was the son of Chizkiyahu Melech. That means he lived in the middle or towards 2/3 of the first Beis Hamikdash. This story happened towards the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. So how many years? At least 300 years. Still made an impression. He says, why? Because when somebody sees an Avera done again and again, it makes an impression that lasts hundreds of years. Let's say a person has to talk in short, he has to be aware that the impression can last years, that people think themselves not surprised. It's an unbelievable statement, Marshall. That this statement is years apart. And Afra became, so he says, it made an impression all the way to Second Beis Hamikdash. Since Menashe killed so many people, so murder became less chomo. Hundreds of years later, death was not as chomo. Okay. Says the Gemara. Which story happened first, the stabbing or the pushing off the lamp? That first the stabbing happened. They never made a raffle after they saw this terrible tragedy. And just because somebody breaks his leg, so why would they do? So they must have made the breaking of the leg was happened first. The kid of the Kinu Paisa, the Gemara says that either way it doesn't make sense. If first he broke his leg and then they made the raffle, so why did he have to stab him? Because there was already a raffle. If the first stabbing and then the break of the leg, why would they not make a raffle by the stabbing and only make a raffle much later? The first story that happened was the stabbing. The Moshe Forshim explained this, but no. Stabbing is something which is so rare that they didn't see a need to make a takana because they never thought that's going to happen again. That's never going to happen. So therefore, they never made a takana for that. That even not in the case of stabbing, but just in pushing, so that's the maskon of the Gemara. There was two stages. First was this terrible tragedy of the stabbing, but that didn't cause them to change the methods because they thought that's a very unique case. It's never going to be repeated. But then they saw that even without that, in a normal quote-unquote situation where people just pushing can cause such danger that people can break their legs, so they felt they have no choice but to make a new system. If you find a dead body, the city being all the Azores. Like Shai wants to ask, can Yerushalayim be going to go over? 10 things were said about Yerushalayim. 10 unique things. What's one of them? Beis. It doesn't make it doesn't make any sense. Is when we don't know who stabbed. Here we saw clearly in front of our eyes. The whole purpose of this speech was not because he actually meant that we're going to bring an Egla Rufa over here. He wanted to stir people up, so he said, think about it, we need to bring an Egla Rufa. They were more concerned about the tower of the Beis Hamikdash than death. And what happened was, murder became very light. Our towers came to the Kaima, but their fear that things should be told, that remained a level. The concept of murder was as it always was. Our towers came with the Chamir, they became very machmir. What changed over here? The priorities were obviously skewed. Obviously, death, Shvichas is much, much, much worse than Taras Kelim. But when the priority changed, what went wrong over here? Was the priority of Taras Kelim went higher, or the priority of Shvichas Tomim went down? It wasn't a chumrah. It wasn't that they were being so good in Tahara. It was being that they were so mezalzal, so lenient in Shvichas Tomim. Okay. New topic. We're now going back to the mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshen. As we said many times, there were two mitzvahs. One's called Trumas Hadeshen, one's called Yitzhak Hadeshen. Trumas Hadeshen happened every day, and that was you would take a small amount of ashes from the middle of his back. We more even discuss how many ashes. Yitzhak Hadeshen was more like a cleaning system where you take it outside Yerushalayim. So Tonu Rabban, Ufoshat v'lovash begodim achim v'yitzes Hadeshen. Shemani. The pasuk says, "V'lovash begodim achim," which to wear other clothes for the Yitzhak Hadeshen. That means he has to change his clothes. Now, we know of a changing of the clothes. Who changes his clothes quite a lot? Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur. And that actually gives a whole lot of yichus that Kohen Gadol has indeed two sets of clothes. White clothes, the 4 white, and the 8, we call them gold, all exactly gold, but they had gold in them. But a normal Kohen doesn't have 2 sets of clothes. So what does it mean that he should change and wear other clothes? What other clothes should he wear? What does it mean that we should wear other clothes? He doesn't have a different set of clothes. He only has 1 set of clothes. That's the kasha. Shemani. It's not a I might have thought. Just like on Yom Kippur, this is how Rashi explains. Just like on Yom Kippur, we're forced to say he has 2 sets of clothes, 1 white and 1 gold. Also over here, we'll change it to weekday clothes, meaning that indeed the normal Kohen does not have 2 sets of clothes. So if we've got no choice when the apostle says, we mean other clothes, we mean weekday clothes. Says the Gemara, no, that's not pshat. Talmud Lema, how do I know that's not true? Other clothes. Others, if I say this and this, I'm comparing them a little bit. Others is always a comparison to the first. So both sets of clothes had to be Kaddish. There was no such thing as making 1 set Kaddish, 1 set not. So in what way were they different? Now what happened was they were less valuable. That means they wore exactly the same clothes, but 1 set of clothes was clean and white and ironed, Rashi says, and the other set of clothes were old and dull and worn. Rabbi Lezer, he says a different pshat. He splits the pasuk and he puts the comma in the wrong place. Not in the wrong place, I should say, in a different place. He reads the pasuk like this. Poshat is begodim v'lo vash begodim. He should change his clothes. Acherim and others, other people should take out the deshen. Who's the other? And this is going to be a big discussion, so let's get it very clear. Now, according to Rabbi Lezer, what's the din? A Baal Mum, somebody who's got a mum, is allowed to take out the deshen. Trumas hadeshen, of course, not pashtus. Oitzas hadeshen, we'll see actually, I shouldn't say, of course, that's machlekas. So he's saying, Oitzas hadeshen, you're allowed to use a Baal Mum to take it out. Anybody remember what else a Baal Mum can do? Well, eat kodshim. He's allowed to eat kodshim. There's another thing a Baal Mum is allowed to do. What's that Baal Mum? We discussed it quite a few times. What can a Baal Mum do? Check the wood if it's wormy. Melishkas deals. You said it to me last time, Levi. What's happening?
I don't know what it was considered doing something.
What do you mean? It was a proper job. It says before, the Baal Mum would stand there and do it when they would sort out the wood and check which one was wormy. Okay. Oh, mama. Achevim. A person should have 2 sets of clothes, 1 for cooking and 1 for serving. You shouldn't use the same set of clothes. Why? Because they get dirty. What? They get dirty. It's very interesting word that, again, actually, because the Rabbi provides this mentioned before, but he says like this. The Gemara says that Esav HaRasha was very unique. He actually had 2 sets of clothes, 1 for cooking for his father Yitzchak and 1 for serving. 1 for serving. He kept this. Gamliel said about himself, I'm not as great as Esav, because I don't. When I serve my father, I use the same clothes. So he has to understand, if you think it's a good thing to do, so do it. If you don't think it's a good thing, don't do it. But why? He said, because it's very important not to pretend to reach a daga which you're not up to. He realized Esav felt a certain chashivus for his father, that when he was cooking and serving, he would serve 2 sets of clothes. But just to imitate him, that's not a way of serving. And therefore, it's interesting. Yeah, only if it's for me. He brings a few proofs. And we want to, I don't know if I mentioned here, the Gemara says about that his father used to wait 24 hours, which we meet him up, and he only waited 12 hours. He said, I'm like vinegar, the son of wine. He said, well, again, if your father waits 24 hours, think it's a good thing, do it. If you're not, don't. The answer is his father had it within him. The Gemara writes a few places. The many times a person tries to pretend to have a daga, lives by the daga, doesn't cope with it, and then he gets upset with Hashem. Adam Shalif Darker with Hashem Yizaf Lipoy. That person's foolishness makes him do wrong things, and then he gets irritated with Hashem. Okay. Omar Ishlokish. Kemachlukis voitzo kach machlukis ba'avoma. The same machlukis whether Baal Mum is allowed to do Oitzoa Sadeshan is the same machlukis by Truma Sadeshan. It comes out that according to Ishlokish, according to Rabbi Lezer, is a Kohen Baal Mum allowed to do Truma Sadeshan? No, we didn't
No,
do
also
words.
Truma.
Oh, my gosh, Lucas, but it's not Levi, you're never going to do this, Chas Shora. It's rubbish. It's enough.
Yeah, the Meister, he's not about mum.
Not Balmum.
Not about mum.
Again, just like according to Rabbi Lezer, Balmum is allowed to do a Tzoas Adeshen, and Balmum is allowed to do Trumas Adeshen. There's a huge Havichus, the top taste is I haven't got time to do it, quite quick taste, but it goes through a very strange thing. Because Trumas Adeshen is a real Avodah. If it's a real Avodah, how can the Balmum do it? He says it's a very interesting thing. There's a Balmum. So somebody asks you, what could a Balmum do? Besides the wood, you're right. He can't do Trumas Adeshen because we passed like the Chachamim and he's not allowed to not do Trumas Adeshen, not Trumas Adeshen. But according to Rishlokish, according to Rabbi Lezer, who says allowed to do Trumas Adeshen, is allowed to do Trumas Adeshen. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't agree. Rabbi Yehuda, everybody agrees it's an avodah, the Kohen cannot do it. My time do Rishlokish. Let's read the pasuk very carefully. The pasuk is in Vayikra Vav pasuk Gimel. He should wear his coat made out of linen. Umichnis his trousers. Yilbash Abesoi should wear these clothes. Behirim Adeshen, he should take Trumas Adeshen Shatur Chaloish. There are two fundamental questions in this pasuk. One, it says the word Velovash twice. Velovash HaKohen, the Kohen should wear Midui Bad Yilbash Abesoi. You don't need to say Yilbash Abesoi. You just said the word Velovash. The word Yilbash is completely spare. We had this question, and we're going to have it again and again, the same word for word. That question and the same word for word answer. Very good. But there's another fundamental question. The pasuk says he should wear his coat, his shirt, and his trousers. How many clothes does a normal Kohen wear? 4. Belt, hat, trousers, shirt. The pasuk only mentions 2. So there's 2 questions on this pasuk. One is it says word Velovash twice. Oh, very good. We'll come to it in a second. And one is it says Lovash.
Change the clothing patch.
We'll see. We'll see. There's a double question. Why did it say Lovash Yilbash twice? The same Yilbash. It doesn't make. And the second question only mentions the shirt and the trousers, and mentions the belt and hat. Says Rishlokish. My time do Rishlokish. Oh look, Isaac that Chavoidi. Yes, Chavoidi. Rishlokish read the pasuk as is, meaning that what? You only wear 2 clothes. You only wear 2 clothes. So it's a lie. If you only wear 2 clothes, it's not real avodah. If it's not real avodah, so therefore, a Balmum could do it. The Torah says trousers and shirts. And also, you have to wear the hat and the belt. If you have to wear all 4, why does the Torah just say 2? Just say all 4, say none. It's a very strange thing. If I want to wear all 4 clothes, it doesn't say for every avodah wear all 4 clothes. It doesn't say you catch the blood wearing all 4 clothes. You should sprinkle the blood wearing all 4 clothes. Because we know you have to wear 4 clothes. So why over here mention only 2? I didn't mention all 4 or not. Answers more, there's 2 drashas. Midui bad, midui kimidos. It has to fit him exactly. A Kohen headed to wear clothes which are too short or too long, the avodah is possible. The first thing he has to wear every morning is the trousers. He should put it directly on his skin. You don't put on your shirt, then your trousers, you put in your trousers and your shirt. So now that we've got these psukim to teach you these 2 specific halachas, so Rishlokish can't tell you that's only these 2 clothes. So how does Rishlokish know it? Rishlokish, my midoi kemidosim. After achon v'loshin midoi, shnei davar kedem. So that's I'm going on. Rishlokish midoi kemidosoi. Midafter achon v'loshin midoi. Shnei davar kedem echnesayim abasoi nafka. Again, Rishlokish learns that you only wear 2 clothes. Avichon learns 4 clothes. Avichon says, why did it mention these 2 clothes to tell you 2 drashas? The shirt that it says midoi, that has to fit him exactly. The trousers, that's the first thing you should wear. The Shlokish says, I learned everything from this pasuk. I learned the fact that you only wear 2 clothes because the Torah mentions 2 clothes, and I learned these 2 halachas because the Torah adds and phrases it in a way which tells us these 2 halachas. What are the 2 halachas? Midoi. It could have just said midoi bad. Why call it? It could have said kisonis bad. Why does it call it midoi bad? To teach you there has to be that measure. In fact, it says say bad al basoro. It teaches me that you have to wear it first. So therefore, I don't need it to tell me those halachas. I already know those halachas. So therefore, according to Rishlokish, it's only 2 clothes and not 4 clothes. So we've got 2 machlekes which are Vichin and Rishlokish. One is how many clothes did every single Kohen wear when they did Trumas Hadeshen. According to Vichin, there were 4. According to Rishlokish, there were 2. And again, according to Rabbi Lezer, can a Baal Mum do Trumas Hadeshen? We're up to Nemek Tanoi. I'm going to stop here because the next Gemara continues with the other question, the word Yilbash. and it doesn't stop till
How do Rambam pass on that?
yeah, I got call this. It was bucketing. I said to my wife,